oversight on our traditional customary practices and reminding the process and how we're all here wanting a voice in that process. And when I say the process of the use of the land and the impacts it has on our Native community, as well as the others that are traditional practitioners. And when you hear about traditions, the first thing that a person thinks about is that it's one, bottled up in one culture. And throughout the years, it's evolved to all of us having an opportunity to go to the ocean, go to the forest, and be able to continue to perpetuate what was taught in their families, to feed their families. And so my portion is to remind our government that although the law protects us, we have something in law, and the Hawaii State Constitution, Article 12, Section 7, we find ourselves having to remind government as they go through the process and the processing the environmental assessment. Hopefully we can get through that so that we can get to an environmental impact statement. And I think that what we're wanting to have is a voice at the decision-making table for something that is already there and ours. And we feel like the authority for what they're using in consulting when they do the environmental assessments and the environmental impact statements, it's an authority that has a PhD and not necessarily, the people that spend, I think, more time in the forest and the ocean than conservationists. And the only time after they go through the process, to the environmental assessment, they have steps that they have to go and get to before they can even get to a public hearing. And public hearing means that you put a notice out, you have all the people come to this little, whatever they hold on the wall, and you have 3 minutes to give to address something that you're passionate about, and it's not enough time. So, but by the time they have this public hearing and doing the environmental assessment, they've already gone through the several steps, and I don't think our public knows the process and what goes, what they went through already with different commissions. They go through the environmental OEQC, and then they go, if they have to, if necessary, they go to another commission called the Coastal Zone Management, and then you go through all these processes, and then you have a public hearing, and not enough time to give the impacts that that we're saying time and time again, year after year, how it's impacting, especially the Hawaiian community who have the rights already in place to protect them in gathering and feeding their families. And before you know it, it gets to after the hearing is done, it goes to the Board of Land and Natural Resources. And then you have to go flying over to Oahu. Hopefully they another 3 minutes to go and tell them that, wait a minute, we said that it impacts our community. And then you stand there and you look at the people that are on the commission. And I think this is something that I'm saying because I personally had the opportunity with Kyle Suarez in a water issue, flying over to Oahu and explaining that, excuse me, but part of this process is to identify the impacts that it has in one culture, and that's our Hawaiian culture. And I don't see anything else in the process, other races that, or ethnic groups that have to see if it impacts. I'm sure, they're public. But one culture that has a cultural impact assessment, that has to be done. And it's always a Fonzie saying that there's no impact. So when we go there, I said, wait a minute, okay, I think you inadequately made a decision because who on your Board of Land and Natural Resources, who on your OEQC, and who on your CZM qualified to speak in my behalf? And so Bill Aiona told me, I caught him in one of the testimonies, he said, Sam Don. And I said, Sam Don, he's the one that's representing me. And He said, yes. So we go to Board of Land and Natural Resources, hoping that Sam Gunn is going to be sitting there to hear my testimony. He's my representative. He was told he was my representative. And then he walks out when it was our turn. And I said, excuse me, Chairman Aiona, where is he going? Isn't he the one to listen to in my behalf? And he says, well, he can't because he's with Nature Conservancy. And I said, Chairman Bill Aiona, isn't that a conflict of interest? You know, so what I'm saying is that we have to go through these processes and we follow them, but we don't have a voice in any part of this. And then a FONSI is made saying that, what is that? Findings of no significant impact. And then projects go on. So they never get to an EIS because it's sufficient, the environmental assessment. And therefore, projects, action that is taken continues to go. But the funding that comes for all these projects and the authority, I believe, comes from the university. I think they wrote the environmental impact statement. They write a lot of our policies, rules, and regulations. I've read the state policies, environmental policies, and every step there is, and we have no voice. And I really believe that in every commission, there should be someone qualified. And I don't know how they come up with the criteria for the person to be qualified to speak on my behalf, but it's done administratively. So when I question who wrote the criteria for the person that's going to be sitting on these commissions to speak on my behalf, because it is connected to spirituality. And they just recently put one in legislation to sit on the Board of Land and Natural Resources. And the whole year I've asked the Department of Land and Natural Resources can the public have an opportunity to be a part of the criteria that you write for this particular person? Because it's a critical component for the process. And we're not getting a fair share of this and opportunity. So I find out, can I have the draft? Can we participate in this in the criteria? And then when legislation came, it was already done. And so we continue to go through these processes and never be a part of critical components of the processes. And we have to time and time again remind government that it's already a law that protects us. And why aren't we given a fair share for decision-making seat at the table?
Okay. Anybody got any? I'll open it up to the floor.
I'm going to shift a little bit.
Okay.
Mr. Aiona, I don't know if you remember, but I represented Ohana Hopakele and you were Lieutenant Governor. We came in and had an interview with you. So I brought a new packet of material on Ohana Hopakele. And what we didn't know at that time, we thought the government statistics, the state of Hawaii statistics were that Hawaiians were maybe between 38 and 41% of the prison population. Dr. Radine Karasuda wrote a PhD thesis, and she says there is at least 60% of the population are part or Native Hawaiians. And so, 60, yeah. And so the first question I really want to ask is, how will you, when you become governor, how will you deal with the disproportionate number of Hawaiians in the prison system? That's the question. And the second question is, will you be an advocate for a puhonua, a wellness center, as a model of healing? That they need healing. They don't need further punishment. They need healing. And so we've been working for 16 years on this model, and would really like to see an advocate like you who's been through the system and knows it inside out to promote this kind of puhonua program.
Anybody else?
Yeah. I'm Jody Rivera, Pat Souza's cousin. Finally get to meet you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I like to kind of comment on what he's talking about.
You get good music?
My brother.
Oh, your brother, that's
Well,
right.
I half brother.
Yeah.
But
You
anyway,
know what? I think on CD, but.
yeah. Half brother. Yeah. Anyway, what he's talking about is another issue, and I agree with all of them. I'm a hunter myself, and I've been a hunter for 51 years. And of course, you know, Hawaiian heritage, you know all about the land and all that kind of things. But what he's talking about, I've been a correction officer for 20 years. So I see the system, how it is with the inmates. And yes, there is a lot of Hawaiians, you know, for whatever reason, you know. And but what's important is that I used to take out the work lines out in the community. And there's so many inmates that's sitting there doing nothing. I mean, if you go to Halenani, you've been there when they opened up the new building. I was there that day, and it's kind of a joke. You know, I know money has a lot to do with it, yeah. But then on the other hand, they shouldn't be idle. This gentleman here has, I believe, he has some kind of agriculture thing going on. And he does, and there's things that they can do in the community to educate them and keep them more, you know, they have hope in life. You know, as it is right now. They watch TV, play cards, figure where the next joint gonna come from, you know, things of that nature. And it's pretty sad. It's pretty sad. And then back to the land issue and stuff, it's very important. You know, I raised up on Oahu, and I've seen how, you know, I'll give you an example, the Waikani Kahana tunnels. I don't know if you're familiar with those tunnels that they go through Mililani. And they had people up there that used to maintain it. And it's a disaster now. You can't even walk through it. We used to cross over into Kahana Valley and come back to Waikani through the tunnels. From what I understand, you no longer can. It's built up with dirt and rocks, and so the water is not, you know, flowing freely. There's a lot of, I know you're going to have a lot of issues. I mean, 1,000,001 issues. Which one do you address first? You know, and bottom line is all of it, one at a time. You know, so hopefully, you know, we of course, you know, I know I'm voting for you. I asked Pat, who you voting for? Jokingly, and he's, yo, Duke, of course.
Thank you for telling me that. I was always worried about it.
Yeah, but I was joking. And I left him a message, and he responded with a message. Oh, Duke, I laughed and said, Maruz, I know you're voting for Duke. But anyway, so we just pray to God that you get in, and I know you have a lot of Christian values that I appreciate. And hopefully it'll turn things around, turn our government around. You know, it was meant to be for the people. And lately, if you look at our government all the way to Washington, it's not too much for the people anymore. You know, it's pretty sad. And we need to make a difference, and I believe that you can. And I appreciate it. Thank you.
And one more thing to say, I was asked by fishermen to bring to your attention something that's already sitting on the governor's table, and these are conservation efforts. Kaupulenu on the west side, the conservation projects that they have going on right now with a total no-take conservation effort. Well, right now you cannot spear and scuba in the entire from Polo Point all the way down to South Point. There is none, and it was initiated by Nature Conservancy, West Hawaii Fisheries, and so we're saying that, you know, Hawaiians still have the rights to gather for food. But there are other 3 projects that are on the governor's table right now, and that's Lahaina has one right now with the same project in Hawaii. You know, so these are the things that were a concern to a lot of the fishermen, because a lot of the reasons for their conservation effort is, you know, they feel that the commercial fishermen have been used as the reason for, the depletion of the waters, our resources in the waters. And also the Native Hawaiians that are traditional practitioners that go and spearfish. And so what they were saying is that there has been no data to prove the depletion for these particular groups, but they're always targeted for these conservation efforts. And these are funded through the University Sea Grant, which is always something that is given through DLNR, and they run their rules and policies and regulations through Chapter 91. And a lot of these rules and regulations don't have the participation of a traditional customary practitioner or a subsistence gathering view, because of the fact that the university is the authority and holding the say for biology and science. So we have here, you have the hunters and the subsistence gatherers versus the science all the time. And almost always for the last 100 years, the authority has always been the PhD. And here we are, hoping that somehow the policies, somehow they use our policies, rules, and regulations to kind of manipulate around, Chapter 343 in environmental law regulations, somehow superseding the laws that are already in place of protecting the practitioner. And that was my part.
Anybody else?
Yeah, they're constantly funding for invasive species. Abercrombie just signed in again June 20th of 2014. Another $5 million allotted for fiscal year 15, along with $750,000 that was already appropriated. So that's almost $6 million more for invasive species. They have $360 million for 10 years of fencing and eradication. Mark Spain, fired. You guys can't get hired. You don't have money. We've had policemen come to the PC meetings. They can't get hired. They don't have money. DNR tells you the officers, we can't man the areas of RAP. We don't have money. But they get all this money for fencing and eradication. So birds and plants come before people. They won't come before all of our kids and all of our future. We have to somehow stop the federal oversight taking precedence over us and who we are. And we need somebody to balance that with us. Yes. Yeah.
Can I make a short comment?
Yeah, just a quick one on what Joe just said about that. I called a couple times from poachers and stuff like that that's been going in areas that is closed. And the response that I got was, oh, we don't have money to do enforcement or anything like that. So us as the hunters, we're the enforcers. It's like, why, we paying you guys too, right? So you guys supposed to do your job. So, but like I said, where's all that money going? What are you guys doing? Because you guys not patrolling. Yeah, that's true too.
I have a couple.
Yeah, this is patrol. But the thing is, when you call, then, oh, we know enough funds, but you got money to do everything else.
Go ahead,
Um,
Paul.
it's taken DLNR 14 years to do the habitat conservation plan for 6.5 years to gain rules and regulations, which are now on their way to coming out. There's talk of having I think they talked to you about a game commission for the state, which is sorely needed. We're not talking about sustainable resources in Hawaii. There's this grand push by the environmental community to downplay the animals that 2,000 years ago, Polynesians knew enough to bring game here, potatoes and everything else as a resource. And as time went on, we had, Westerners that started to come here and they introduced more resources here. And there's this argument that's out there saying that, these animals don't belong here. There's a date certain, like 2,000 years ago, that they feel that Hawaii needs to be, well, we've evolved with the rest of the world. And what we need is management. I'm sure you've heard this time and time, again. But we have a constitution that in 1979 took out our game resources from the Constitution, but they never ratified that. So essentially, our game animals really are still protected by the Constitution. That we have to stay not challenging this massive eradication that we have for animals up here that are not doing harm to the Hilo in one case. And another troubling thing to me is, and I wrote a letter to the Attorney General and I asked them if they could ask why. I mean, if DLR is supposed to follow the rules of HRS, in your opinion, as a judge? Okay. Well, we have a rule here, 263-10, it says no hunting or no shooting of animals from a helicopter or from the air. And for years, I mean, back in the 80s, they started aerial eradication up on Mauna Kea. All over the state of Hawaii Nature Conservancy. In fact, when we went to the and asked them about, how is it that DLR can shoot from helicopters, game from helicopters. And it took a year for them to get back to us. And they got back to us and said, well, DLR said it's defensible. They've got this federal judge that, more or less ratified this illegal agreement, we feel, between the DLR and the federal government to do the aerial eradication. And in fact, one attorney friend of mine said, that's like having, some judge telling some crook to go out and rob a bank to pay his taxes. It's the science against this. 263-10 is aerial shooting. That weekend, in fact, before they called us, on KITV, they were talking about some sheep or goats, I'm not sure what they were, why not, that they actually shot from a helicopter to get rid of them off the there. So even the ombudsman was surprised that, that this defensive argument up there, if the 263-10, applies to everybody, why would the DLR, blatantly doing these things? And that's not the only thing. She brought up a lot of these issues where they're supposed to be participating with the public. They're not participating with the public whatsoever. We've been trying to get a voice. And in fact, there was an organization created when Lars first went in and fenced in a lot of these areas here, National Areas Working Group. And this National Areas Working Group came to a consensus, an agreement that we put into a bill that was submitted 2 years ago. That DLR came out and said, oh, we don't need to do that. It's not part of it. The agreement was between the environmental community, DLR, and the hunters. This had more to do with pigs than sheep and goats. But the fact of the matter is that agreements are not accepted by DLR, and they do everything they can do to have a tendency to maneuver around all these things. And rainfall forest he's talking about, and this new watershed plan that they're doing. And I'm going to stop here. Not a single public hearing was conducted on any of this thing, which is a massive takeover of all of our forest lands. And I'm sure you're familiar with the MARS program, and the fact that MARS is supposed to be sort of like a little museum piece that's supposed to protect, and take us back to maybe pre-contact if they can. We're abandoning MARS to now turn into our watersheds. And like Joe said, management needs to be game management, and they refuse to do this. DLNR will absolutely, completely refuse to do this. Game management needs to be done within all of our forest lands. And they're right. They need to go out there and do a census, what's the animal, what's the impact. There is a number of animals, of an animal type that can live in our forest, not zero. And that is something that I hope we can help us with.
My concern basically as an educator in animal science, aqua sciences, and agriculture is to teach our youth how to survive in these islands, as well as learning life skills, which a lot of our youth will have. We have scouting programs, 4-H programs, and stuff like that up at our ranch. And, we don't ask for any, any funding or anything like that. Everything is construction guys and stuff like that. We put it all together, we make something with the kids and stuff, And basically, it's the idea of plantation. How the plantation people came over here, the Japanese, Filipinos, Chinese, Portuguese, how they survived in 100 years of agriculture and was able to survive. And yet now, the kids don't know how to survive if there's any kind of catastrophe. But on this island alone, when we had Isel, okay, and we had the devastation. My son guys, hunters, gatherers, agriculturers, they got together along with a whole bunch of other hunters and gatherers, fishermen, and ranchers. And they was able to feed over 500 people down at the Mormon Church with KL. And then we tried to do it again. But somebody came out and said, oh, has the meat's all been inspected and all that kind of stuff. There's always something, you know what I mean? When you're trying to do something good. But the thing about it is, was able to do that, and a lot of other people in the community got together and worked hand in hand, whether it be cutting trees or helping them with generators and stuff like that, and was able to do that as a small community before FEMA came up, before the National Guard came up, days before Governor Abercrombie came up. You know what I'm saying? We can survive in these islands. I don't know about Honolulu because you guys got all that mass transit stuff going on and stuff, and you're doing away with your prime agricultural land. So I figure a lot of people will be dying, if the ships do quit coming in, and if there's war or disease. On this island, the mountain up there, along with Mauna Loa and all the rest of the mountains, have fed tons of people, cattle, sheep, goats, pigs, all these animals that were taken from the mountain. That's the refrigerator right there. And then fed the family, put food on the table. The ocean, trading meat for fish and things like that. Right now, and this is what we're trying to do at our ranch, is trying to raise the newest ranchers and farmers. I'm working with Micronesians right now. I'm working with juvies in juvenile probation, along with adult probation. I'm working with, I'm going to say what my sons and I, the Ohana, and other people. We're working with Goodwill, single moms, and showing them you don't have to be the only to no man to take care of you. You can take care of your kids. Let us show you how to run and create a business of your own in agriculture and feed the state, feed your people, feed the community, feed your kids, and give them hope that you got something in the future for yourself, business of your own. So we're working with the Farm Services Agency, the USDA, along with Natural Resources Conservation, and putting things together and helping people. So this is the kind of stuff we're doing, and we've got scouting and 4-H. I guess what I'm saying is that we've got prime agricultural lands over here, from Hilo all the way to Waimea, all the way to Kohala, that can feed the entire state. All we need to do is train the kids and anybody who wants to be ranchers and farmers to have a small business of their own. And small business, I'm not talking about corporate people like Monsanto, Pioneer, or Syngenta, and all these other clowns who just want to take over more land. I'm talking about people, small business people, that want to have something for themselves and be able to have a co-op and be able to have this foods distributed. We can feed you guys. We can feed the whole state. On top of that, we can even export, not import the way it is. We can reverse the whole thing around, where 15% may be consuming from the outside, 85% exporting and feeding our people. That's what I'm looking for as far as you being the next governor. That's what I'd like to see. And getting our young people, especially in DHHL land and stuff like that, or community schools land and stuff like that, the kids that I want over there, and put those lands to production. 5, 10, 20 acres that they have, and you only cars growing on the land, or maybe planting weeds and guava trees still producing and nothing happening with it. We can make a difference. Hopefully you become the governor.
Also,
That's what I was trying to say about like the inmates. They could be working in these kind of scenarios. The healthy ones, instead of doing dead time.
also, you got DHHL and community schools is now defensive enforcement programs now. Reforestation programs. DHHL up 26-mile marker and 23-mile marker up in Saddle Road. They got 56,000 acres, they just entered into a 100-year contract for fencing and reforestation.
You just jump.
Instead of managing it, they will put it into a 100-year contract, they won't give Nature Conservancy them. They're doing the Nene Goose, they have a 1,500-acre sanctuary up there just for the Nene Goose. How many local people you know they get 1,500 acres? They got so many personal playgrounds just here, the Hakalaos. You had Rob Pacheco runs the biggest eco-tourist business in the state of Hawaii. He was hit on top of the borderline of natural resources. He can go into the Hakalaos with his eco-tourist business. Not one of us here can go inside there. To penetrate the forest behind it. And, you know, it's just been justice, meaning just us. It hasn't been anything with the local people. 80 to 90% of the people in Hawaii has been special interest groups. We need to somehow curb them, and like Gino was saying, reverse it. Reverse it back where we use our resources instead of killing our resources. You know, we're too smart for that. We can manage our resources.